All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into the life of Melania Trump. We're going way beyond just the headlines this time. We're using her autobiography. It's called Melania, to try to get a first-hand look at her journey. And it's a fascinating one. I mean, it takes us all the way from her childhood in Slovenia,
Yeah.
growing up in communist Slovenia, to becoming the first lady of the United States.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think it's so interesting to hear directly from people who've lived these, I don't know, kind of these unique lives, these kind of, one-of-a-kind experiences.
Yeah, for sure. And it can really challenge our assumptions. Like going into this, I was really struck by, she talks about prosperity and individual responsibility as part of her experience growing up in communist Slovenia.
Yeah.
Which,
It was.
not the stereotypical image that we often have.
Yeah, that's right. It's not at all what we I guess the common narrative, that we think of.
Right. And one detail that really kind of stuck with me was her story about her father's Citroen Maserati SM. Can you imagine this sleek, luxurious car cruising around Slovenia in the 80s?
It's such a powerful image, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
In her book, she talks about how that car represented a sense of freedom, this kind of longing for something beyond just the everyday.
Right.
And I think that yearning for exploration, that really seems to run through her whole life.
It's like a thread connecting all the different chapters. And, speaking of connections, Melania was very close to her sister, Eunice. And they bonded over, things like music and fashion. All things creative. I mean, can you picture them at their first concert together? Elton John's European Express tour in 1984.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to think about how, that shared love for creativity might have influenced Melania's path. I mean, her modeling career, it wasn't something that she, planned out. It was pure chance.
Right.
Just a photographer, spotting her at age 17.
Yeah, talk about a life-changing moment.
Right.
Yeah, and, this wasn't some glamorous high fashion photo shoot or anything. It was just Melania and her sister and this photographer in a very simple studio in Ljubljana. But clearly, her natural beauty, it just shone through. And she ends up winning a modeling competition in Italy.
And that's where things get really interesting because she's offered this modeling contract, which, could be her big break, but she turns it down.
Wow.
Why? Because she felt the agency was being dishonest with her.
Wow, that takes guts. Especially when you're young and starting out. I mean, it really shows that she had a strong sense of self.
Yes.
Even back then. I mean, she knew her worth.
Absolutely.
She wasn't going to compromise her values.
Exactly. And that kind of integrity, it's so crucial, especially in a world like modeling.
Right.
So fast forward a few years, right? She's in New York City. It's the 90s. It's this whirlwind, trying to make it in the modeling world.
Oh, yeah. I could just picture her, she's walking the streets, portfolio in hand, heading to go sees. She describes living in this charming one-bedroom apartment in a brownstone near Park Avenue.
But it wasn't all work and no play, though.
Right.
Right. She talks about, exploring the city's art scene, visiting MoMA, the Guggenheim, all those iconic places.
It's really fascinating how she was able to balance, those two sides of her life, the hustle and ambition of modeling, but also just this genuine appreciation for art and culture.
Right.
It paints a much more complex picture of her than just the stereotypical, image of a model.
Definitely. Definitely. And then, of course, there's that fateful night at the Kit Kat Club during Fashion Week in 1998.
Yeah.
Enter Donald Trump.
Oh, yes. The encounter that changed everything. He was actually there with another date. But that didn't stop him from introducing himself to Melania.
I wonder if she had any idea what she was getting herself into. Apparently, she just kind of brushed it off as just another, party interaction. Little did she know. Yeah, this chance meeting would lead to a whirlwind romance, a high-profile marriage, and eventually, this unexpected journey to the White House.
It's like something out of a movie. I mean, speaking of movies, their wedding was like the definition of extravagant. We're talking Dior gown with 1,500 pearls, star-studded guest list, performances by Tony Bennett, Billy Joel, Paul Anka.
Wow.
Talk about a who's who of the entertainment world.
Oh, my gosh. That's incredible.
Yeah.
But amidst all the glitz and glamour, Melania made this very conscious decision to step back from the spotlight when Barron was born.
It seems like she really wanted to create a sense of normalcy for him, despite their extraordinary circumstances. I mean, that's something that a lot of parents can probably relate to, that desire to, To protect your child from the pressures of fame in public life.
Absolutely. And while she focused on motherhood, she didn't completely disappear from the public eye. She launched her own jewelry line on QVC, which, by the way, sold out in minutes. And then, came her skincare line, which was inspired by her lifelong interest in natural beauty and wellness.
Right. So it shows that she was also a savvy businesswoman, carving out her own path beyond just being Mrs. Trump. But then, as we all know, the world shifted dramatically when Donald decided to run for president.
Right. And suddenly, Melania's life takes another unexpected turn, from this relatively private life to the global stage.
Yeah. Talk about a whirlwind.
It really is.
It's hard to imagine the pressure and scrutiny that comes with being, thrust into the spotlight like that. She initially envisioned herself as a more traditional first lady, taking cues from someone like Jackie Kennedy. But the world had changed. Social media, 24/7 news coverage. It was a whole new ballgame.
A whole new ballgame, yeah. And right out of the gate, she faced controversy with her speech at the Republican National Convention.
Oh, yeah.
But instead of shying away from that, she kind of used it as a learning experience and became even more involved in shaping her public image.
It shows a certain resilience.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
It really does.
A willingness to learn and adapt in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about how she navigated that experience and what it taught her.
Well, one thing that really emerges is her commitment to children's well-being. She launched the Be Best initiative.
Yeah. Which
focused on cyberbullying, online safety, and opioid abuse.
That's right. And it wasn't just a, superficial campaign. I mean, she spoke about meeting a father whose son had committed suicide.
Yeah.
Because of cyberbullying. And it clearly had a profound impact on her.
It really did. And despite facing criticism, particularly given her husband's own online behavior, she remained dedicated to the initiative's message.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how she reconciled those two things.
Yeah.
Her husband's actions.
And
her own advocacy. But regardless,
Yeah.
she clearly used her platform to connect with people from all walks of life. I mean, she had some pretty incredible experiences as First Lady. State visits to Saudi Arabia and the Vatican, even a poignant trip to Africa.
I mean, those experiences, they must have been eye-opening.
Yeah.
Giving her this firsthand look at global issues and cultures far beyond what she was accustomed to. I imagine it challenged her perspectives in ways that she hadn't anticipated.
Absolutely. But let's not forget her passion for White House restoration.
Yeah.
I mean, she was meticulous about preserving history.
Yeah.
While adding modern touches.
It's almost like she was weaving her own story into the fabric of the White House itself.
Yeah.
She oversaw these projects like the Red Room restoration, the discovery of this Lincoln-era wallpaper, even the renovation of the Queen's bedroom. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about honoring the past while looking towards the future.
And she was doing all of this while navigating the chaos of the 2020 election and the unprecedented challenges brought by the pandemic.
Which is a whole other chapter in itself. I mean, remember that trip to India, right as the virus was emerging? Melania was deeply concerned about her team's safety, and she voiced those concerns despite pushback. It shows that she wasn't afraid to stand up for what she believed in, even when it was difficult.
And then there's that unforgettable experience of being rushed to the White House bunker. During the protests following George Floyd's death, it must have been a stark reminder of the volatility and uncertainty of those times.
It certainly was. But through it all, Melania remained focused on her duties as First Lady, supporting her husband, advocating for her causes. And while, losing the election was undoubtedly a disappointment, she emerged with a sense of optimism and a clear vision for her future endeavors. Speaking of which, I'm eager to delve into her life after the White House, particularly her work with the foster care community and the launch of Fostering the Future.
Me too. But before we jump ahead, let's take a quick break and then come back to explore that next chapter of Melania's story.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
So we left off with Melania transitioning out of the White House.
Yeah.
And, into this new chapter. But, life rarely follows a straight path.
No, it doesn't.
And there were some bumps in the road, particularly that FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, that was definitely a turning point. Melania has spoken about how that event, brought back these unsettling memories of government overreach from her childhood in communist Slovenia.
Yeah.
It really shook her and made her question things.
Yeah, it's understandable, that feeling of violation, the sense that your privacy has been invaded. I mean, it can be incredibly unsettling, especially for someone who's, already wary of government power.
Right, and that wariness, it's a key part of understanding Melania. I think it informs her views on a lot of things, particularly her stance on individual liberty. Her take on my body, my choice is a great example.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You usually hear that phrase in the context of abortion rights, but she kind of flips the script.
Right, she does.
She argues that my body, my choice applies equally to women who choose to carry their pregnancies to term.
It's a bold statement. She's basically saying that true freedom means respecting a woman's right to choose, regardless of what that choice is.
It definitely makes you think about the issue from a different angle.
For sure.
And it speaks to her core belief in personal autonomy.
Yeah, it's almost like she's drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is my body, my decision, and the government has no right to interfere.
Right.
And, that fierce independence, it likely stems from her experiences in Slovenia. Imagine living under a regime where the government could investigate your family simply because you owned nice cars.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the kind of thing that stays with you.
It really is. She actually tells a story about that happening to her father. Someone reported him as being suspicious simply because he had a few nice cars. And the authorities actually launched an investigation.
Wow.
It's chilling.
It's pretty scary. It really highlights how quickly a system can turn against its own citizens. And that fear of government overreach, that sense of vulnerability, it's something that seems to be deeply ingrained in Melania's worldview.
It makes sense given what she lived through. And it explains why she's so vocal about issues like privacy rights and limited government. It's not just an abstract concept for her. It's a personal reality.
Exactly. And it resonates with a lot of people, especially these days where technology makes it so easy for governments to track our every move and collect data on our lives.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about Melania as a mother. She made a very deliberate choice to step back from her modeling career. When Baron was born, it seems like, creating a sense of normalcy for him, despite their unconventional life, was a top priority.
Yeah, it's clear that family is incredibly important to her. She speaks very fondly of her own childhood in Slovenia, the close-knit family dinners, the trips to visit grandparents, summer vacations on the Dalmatian coast. Those memories seem to be a source of strength and grounding for her.
It's interesting how those early experiences can shape us, even when we go on to lead.
Yeah.
Very different lives. And it's heartwarming to hear her talk about the joy she found in those simple moments with Baron. Playing with him, reading to him, just being present.
Yeah, those early years must have been precious, especially knowing that the spotlight would eventually find them. Once Donald entered politics, there was no escaping the media scrutiny.
It must have been a constant battle to protect Baron's privacy and shield him from the negativity.
Yeah.
She's talked about the challenges of raising a child in the public eye, the limitations on their freedom, the hurtful comments and attacks from the media.
It can't be easy.
No.
But she also emphasizes Baron's resilience, his ability to adapt and thrive despite those pressures. She seems incredibly proud of the young man he's become.
And she credits her husband with being a very involved father, despite his, demanding career. It sounds like they've created a strong family unit, a source of support amidst all the chaos and scrutiny.
And speaking of support, Melania's faith also seems to play a significant role in her life. She's a devout Catholic. Yeah. And she often talks about how her faith guides her through difficult times.
It's interesting how those personal beliefs can be such a source of strength and resilience, especially when you're, facing public criticism or personal challenges. It's like having an inner compass. That helps you stay grounded.
Yeah, and that sense of purpose, it seems to extend to her philanthropic work as well. She's particularly dedicated to helping children, especially those who are vulnerable or facing adversity.
Her Bibist initiative is a perfect example of that. It really seemed to come from a genuine place of concern about the well-being of children in the digital age, with all the challenges that come with social media, cyberbullying, and even opioid abuse.
Yeah. She really threw herself into that initiative, traveling the country, meeting with experts, hosting events at the White House. And she did it all while facing, criticism and skepticism, particularly from those who saw it as hypocritical, given her husband's online behavior.
It's a tough position to be in, advocating for something you believe in, while also facing, scrutiny and accusations of hypocrisy. But it also speaks to her determination to to use her platform to make a difference,
Like,
regardless of the obstacles.
and it's not just be best. She's also been a vocal advocate for military families, women's empowerment, and the importance of arts and education.
Yeah.
She seems to use every opportunity to highlight causes she cares about and to connect with people from all walks of life.
It's a reminder that there's often more to these public figures than we see in the headlines.
Yeah.
There are layers of complexity, personal struggles, and triumphs that we rarely get a glimpse of.
Yeah, that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. We're peeling back the layers. We're getting beyond the sound bites and the carefully crafted public image. We're trying to understand the person behind the persona. And I think that's what makes Melania's story so compelling.
I agree. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and an unwavering commitment to her values. And even though she's stepped back from the political spotlight, it's clear that she's not done making her mark on the world.
Absolutely. She's writing a memoir. She's launched her own website. She's involved in various business ventures. It's clear that she's shaping her own narrative, taking control of her story, and using her platform to advocate for the causes that she believes in.
It's almost like she's entering a new chapter, one where she's defining success on her own terms, outside the traditional expectations and limitations that have often been placed upon her.
Yeah, and I for one am incredibly curious to see where this next chapter takes her. What will she achieve? What impact will she make? How will she continue to evolve and challenge our perceptions?
Those are great questions, and I think the answers might surprise us. Melania Trump is a woman who's defied expectations and rewritten the rules time and time again, and I have a feeling she's just getting started.
Wow, it's amazing to think about how much ground we've covered in this deep dive. We've gone all the way from Melania's childhood in Slovenia, through her modeling years, her time as First Lady, and now into this exciting new chapter that she's creating for herself.
Yeah, and what I find so striking is how consistent her core values have remained throughout it all. That strong sense of self, the belief in individual liberty, the dedication to family and personal growth. It's all woven into the fabric of her story. It's like those values are the compass.
Yeah.
Guiding her decisions, even when she's navigating uncharted territory. And speaking of uncharted territory, let's talk about her post-White House ventures. She's writing a memoir, she's launched her own website, and she's hinted at some pretty interesting business projects.
Yeah, it seems like she's really taken control of her narrative now, defining success on her own terms. And I think that's particularly significant, given, the constraints that she's often faced, both as a public figure and as a woman in the spotlight.
Right. It's like she's finally breaking free from those expectations and forging her own path. And what I find fascinating is that she's doing it all while maintaining a relatively low profile. She's not chasing headlines. She's not, seeking validation from the media. It's a very deliberate, strategic approach.
It really is. It makes you wonder what she's ultimately aiming for. Is she building a brand? A platform for advocacy, a legacy that extends beyond her time in the White House. I think it's too early to say for sure, but it's definitely something to watch.
Yeah, it's almost like she's playing a long game, laying the groundwork for something bigger. And given her history of, defying expectations, I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up surprising us all.
I completely agree. Melania Trump is a woman who's repeatedly proven that she's capable of reinvention and resilience. And I think that's what ultimately makes her story so compelling. She's not afraid to challenge the status quo, to forge her own path, and to use her platform to speak her truth.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of admiration for her journey. She's faced so many challenges, both personal and professional, and yet she's emerged with a sense of grace, determination, and a clear vision for her future.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity for growth and change, even in the face of adversity. And that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most remarkable destinations.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Melania Trump.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we've provided some insights and perspectives that you might not have considered before.
And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and more to understand about the people who shape our world.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll sign off. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.